felt strange being back in the car with Uncle John. It was a long and quiet ride back out to his ranch, with neither of us taking the initiative to speak. I couldn't believe he'd been responsible for what happened at the Hatchet facility. As soon as the car was parked, I was halfway out the door. John put a hand on my shoulder. "Wait," he said. "Please." I'm not usually that hesitant, but that "please" stopped me dead in my tracks. Without a word, I stayed in the car. "You don't know what those people are like," he continued. "You don't know what they're capable of." "Because you're not telling me shit," I scoffed. "What the hell even happened? Where have you been?" "When you get to the point where I'm at, everything just looks dark," he said. "Problems seem insurmountable, and you start to realize how badly the odds are stacked against you. When you came here, I just hoped to spare you that vision." "Fine." I stepped out, and John followed suit. Leaning against the car, he called out as I walked away. "I'll show you," he sighed. "Just don't let it kill you." I thought about it while he went back inside. I stayed in the car, taking a deep breath and charging my phone for a bit. The screen flickered, and there was this little burst of sound, like the static burst of a walkie-talkie. Strange. I followed John inside, past the posters of the projects he'd worked on. It felt strange walking back into the workshop. It felt darker and bigger. Maybe it was my image of him that had changed. John slumped down into his creaking computer chair and turned on his homemade setup. Strange operating systems written in seemingly random patterns, powered by raw and unprotected wiring hanging from the ceiling. To the average person, John's workshop was just as nightmarish as ever. "When I worked at Hatchet, we refined a metal called Blameless," he sighed. "We refined it from the same stuff I pulled out of your veins." "Yeah, I got some questions about that. Either way, it has some strange properties. You can make all kinds of components with it. Some of this stuff is made of it." He gestured around the room without looking away from his screen. I noticed some symbols moving on the screen without him touching the keyboard. "But you can't trust it," John continued. "You can't trust anything it makes. So why are you working with it?" He pulled down his sunglasses, showing me his strange red eyes. Even the shape looked odd. Now that I got a closer look, there's not much more it can do to me. Hatchet saw to that. John tapped a single key on his keyboard, and the screen started to flicker. There were no folders, tabs, icons, or anything. Just an ever-changing landscape of symbols. "This is Blameless," John said, pointing at the screen. "No need for introductions. She knows who you are." "You sure?" "Yeah," John nodded. "She basically lives on the internet. Hell, I can't imagine the internet without her. She knows pretty much everything about you there is to know. And you can see that there? In that?" "No, this is just her," sighed John, "like a self-portrait. Code flowing across the screen like waves, symbols resembling hieroglyphs rather than letters. It felt like looking out at a landscape of green sand across a black ocean. I couldn't see anyone or anything there." "There's nothing there," I said. "Where is she?" "She's all of it." "Every little piece of it. She isn't just a person or a place. She's a goddamn force of nature." John got up and led me back out in the hall. He pointed at the posters of his old projects. "We made these using her code," he said, and she quickly showed her true colors. "She has an agenda, like a mind of her own. She's living information, like a universal truth being expressed through code. She writes herself, expresses herself, improves herself, like in Terminator. You're closer than you think," nodded John. So these games? We made the concept, but the games pretty much wrote themselves. Instead of a development cycle where you create everything from scratch, we had Blameless. She made everything for us. It was the difference of rowing across the Atlantic Ocean and taking a luxury cruise. He gently touched the poster. We never wanted to launch those games. She did. Even sent me these as a thank you. Turning away from the posters, he looked at me. I had her in my system for too long, and it messed me up. And if you get too close to this, it'll mess with you too. So just trust me when I say that no good can come of this. I believed him. Despite everything, I believed him. I was uncertain if anything would come for me, like in previous months. John assured me that they wouldn't, that he and Evan had done their best to keep whatever was out there at bay. He explained that there were ways to come back from the other side if you knew where to look. He was seemingly surprised I hadn't seen Evan yet. Then again, I might have seen him without knowing. He was hard to spot at a distance. Going back to my room, I plugged in my phone and peeled off my clothes. I took a long shower and just sunk into the floor. It is amazing just how exhausted you can be without even noticing. I almost fell asleep right then and there, on the bathroom floor. I could imagine something bursting through the door, something coming out of the drain, the lights going out and headless monsters tearing me apart. Being back there, in that room, all this darkness just came flooding back. I stepped out and collapsed on the bed, seeing a single notification pop up on my phone. Don't trust him. Anonymous sender. For the time being, there was no better place for me to stay than at John's. Knowing what was out there, I had to accept that this was pretty much the only person ready and capable of keeping me alive. Trust him or not, it was my best option. Over the next few days, I got back to helping John in his workshop. Mostly testing cables, but also tearing up old computers for components. I had to use a mouth cover and safety goggles because there were these internal batteries that could burst if handled improperly. We got back into our routine, but John tried to be more open with me. He told me about his work to contain Blameless online and keeping track of whatever mayhem this thing was causing. He told me about his work with tracking and stopping intrusions, and just trying to use what was already out there to finance his work. He had all these little sites that could skim a bit of money here and there, just enough to keep the lights on and make some backroom investments, but things weren't quite as simple. That message that slipped onto my phone worried me, and it wasn't the last time. Every now and then, a message would pop up on my phone with a little ominous warning. Not every night, and not always the same time, but just often enough to keep me on my toes. Sometimes I'd sit awake at night and just wait for that message to pop up, like I could feel it coming. I got the sense that it knew when I was waiting for it. Now, I'm not an idiot. It wasn't a coincidence that I started getting strange messages just after John introduced me to his work on Blameless. It had to be connected. It had to be a trick, a threat, something to bring me out into the cold. And the Blameless, however she could be described, still managed to crawl into my thoughts. I'd think about that black landscape and the green symbols, weaving back and forth in my mind's eye. A black ocean with a code green undulating landscape. It made me wake up nauseous. As August turned to September, I found myself sitting awake one night staring at a particular message. It had dropped just after midnight, and I didn't know what to make of it. There had been all kinds of subtle messages like, be careful, look out, or keep an open mind. I'd gotten them for weeks. But this was different. Ask him where Evan is. I didn't want to do it. I tried to get it out of my mind. But the truth was, Evan was still missing, and John didn't seem all too concerned. I watched him on and off for a few days, trying to make sense of what he was doing. All I could tell was that he was working on a website. One Thursday night, I couldn't stop myself. I had to ask. I stopped in the doorway and turned back around. "So John, do you know where Evan is?" "No idea," said John, not looking up from his keyboard. "You said he was helping you keep things out," I said, "to keep us safe." "Yeah, it's complicated. I'm just asking where he is." John turned in his chair, looking at me with unblinking eyes. "He's fine." "Why are you asking?" "You don't seem too eager to get him back," I said. I don't know." "He can get back. He'll be fine." "Then why aren't you telling me where he is?" "Because it doesn't matter." John got out of his chair and walked up to me. I could see his gleaming red eyes straight through his sunglasses. "I don't want you running off, putting yourself in danger," he continued. "I don't want you to worry." "Then just tell me," I said. "Just tell me what happened, and I'll be fine." "I can't tell you because you wouldn't understand," John sighed. "You'd freak out. You'd do something dumb. So it's bad." "It's really bad." "No, it's..." John groaned and buried his face in his hands. "You just have to trust me on this," he continued. "Like I trusted you to get me well after that blood poisoning." There was no response. John just looked at me and turned away. Going back to my room that night, I was furious. I went to bed to cool down and started falling in and out of sleep, only to be whispered awake by a strange voice. "Anyone there?" It was coming from my phone. I hadn't answered any calls, but the phone was on speaker. I rolled over looking at it. Unknown caller and an unfamiliar female voice. "Hello?" I considered hanging up or throwing it against the wall. Then again, it was just words, and John was done talking to me. It couldn't hurt to hear them out. I reluctantly picked up the phone. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Are you hurt?" "Hurt?" I chuckled. "No, I'm not hurt." "Why would I be hurt?" "Your uncle hurts people," she said. "You've seen it. He could hurt you." "What? What is this? What are you trying to do?" "What do you mean? Is this a trick to separate us? A way to get to him through me?" "No," she answered matter-of-factly. "I'm a friend. And if you need me, you can talk to me. And if I don't, then I wish you the best of luck." That was it. End of conversation. Over the next few days, the discussions between me and John died off completely. At one point I walked out of the workshop, and he didn't say a word. Several days would pass without either of us breaking the silence. I started to look at him differently. I'd see his little outbursts where he'd smash his hands into the keyboard. I saw the little twitches in his eyes and how quick he was to anger. I started taking notice just how little he ate, drank, and slept. Nothing about John was particularly normal. He barely ever left the workshop. This gave me a lot of opportunities, though. I could freely move around the compound without having to wonder about him checking in on me. I hadn't thought much about it previously, but there were a lot of locked rooms. Sure, John was a bit weird about security in general, but even the kitchen pantry was under lock and key. What damage could I possibly do from there? The final straw was finding the upstairs bathroom locked. He wasn't even using it. I couldn't help but to question what the hell he was hiding. Or was it something else? Maybe just limiting my space? But why? It started to make me question all kinds of things. Like, what was really his relationship to my late father? What was he getting out of helping me? What happened with him and Evan? but I knew I was being manipulated. Whatever the Blameless really was, it was trying its best to get to me. But it was doing so with a calm kindness that I wasn't expecting. And if this was all just about killing me, as a Yearwalker, it was doing a poor job of it. That night, I woke up in a cold sweat. Something was wrong, and I didn't know what. I was wide awake, in the middle of the night, and I couldn't put my finger on what was going on. It didn't take me long to realise my phone was gone. Furthermore, my bedroom door was locked. I tried getting through the windows, but the glass was bulletproof and the lock solid. I'd been captured, and it didn't take a genius to figure out who'd done it. There was only one other person there, who had a propensity to lock things. I tried to keep busy and calm. I'm not good with being locked in. I tried my best not to panic and to keep myself from imagining things. When you have nowhere to go, you start to imagine the worst case scenario. Fires, hunger, choking. Finally, I just started pounding on the door, first with my fists, then with a metal rod from the shower. I tried prying the lock open, but it didn't budge. Finally, a voice came through from the other side. "Fine," John groaned. "Big reveal. I killed him. I killed Evan, because it was the only way to get back, and you've turned into quite the inconvenience, so you're staying right there until I figure out what to do with you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I kept shouting at him. I kept screaming at him to let me out. Now, I'm not claustrophobic, but I was already losing my sense of time. I could hear footsteps as John left me on my own, and I just started tearing up the room, looking for anything to get me out. I was stuck in there for a good 4 hours before I collapsed on the floor, exhausted. I could barely hold it together, and I realised I was shaking. Even if I'd had my phone, what would I do? Call the police? Sitting there, I heard a soft whir as something electronic came to life. A cleaning robot. One of the cheaper brands. It buzzed across the floor, stopping short of knocking into my foot. And a little voice came through over a speaker. "Can you hear me?" It was the same voice I'd heard previously. The strange woman. I sat up straight and picked up the cleaning robot. "Yeah," I said. "Can you hear me?" "Barely," she chuckled. "You didn't answer my call." "What happened?" "He took my phone," I admitted. "I'm locked in." "I'm sorry to hear that," she said. "I wish I could help." "I'm not so sure I trust you either way." "Trust or not, I can get you out." That caught my attention. While she couldn't physically help me, she told me there was a plastic hook partway down the drain in the shower. Using that, I could possibly pick the lock open from this side, with her instruction. And sure enough, the hook was right there. All I had to do was listen. It sounded like something out of a heist movie, but it took me no more than 5 minutes. But there was one thing I hadn't considered. What would I do when I got out? Escape into the woods? Take out John? What was the plan? "Now what?" I whispered to the cleaning robot. "What do I do?" "Everything is going to be locked," it whispered back. "You need to do an override." "And how do I do that?" "Get to the workshop. Once you override the system, you'll have a few minutes before the locks reseal. That's all you need." It wasn't much, but it was all I had. If John was prepared to lock me in my room and kill people, then there was no telling what he'd do next. I made my way across the compound, and all the way back into John's workshop. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't there. That in itself was wildly suspicious, and vaguely threatening. Clutching the cleaning robot to my chest, I tiptoed inside. "The console," said the cleaning robot. "You need to press the big eye-looking symbol." I made my way across the room and looked up at the console window, that sea of black with rolling green code. What John had described as a self-portrait. This wasn't the image I had in mind when I heard that voice coming through. That voice was helpful, not a manifestation of a vast nothing. "Can you see it?" it asked. "Can you see the button?" John's keyboard had at least 50 different symbols and was split into 2 separate pieces. It took me a couple of minutes, but I found the big I. "Got it," I whispered. "Do I press it?" "Yes, but you have to be." The door burst open. I could see John standing there panting. There was a sort of dark sweat trickling down his forehead, and he hadn't had the time to put on his sunglasses. He stopped, holding up a hand. "I need you to step away," he said. "Right now." "Or what?" "Are you locking me back up in my room?" "Now," the robot demanded. "Now, before he can stop you." I turned to the keyboard and held my finger over the symbol, but there was something different. I looked up at the screen, and I could see the green waves passing quicker, like a pulse, getting excited. "I wouldn't lock you in your room," John said. "If you don't want to stay here, just go. But don't press that." "I've been locked in my room all night," I said. "I heard you. I'm not waiting for you to kill me." "What the hell are you talking about? And why are you holding a dash?" John's jaw dropped. He took a step forward, but I just let my finger hover closer to the symbol. He stopped. "She's in the goddamn Wi-Fi," he laughed. "That's it. That's how she's been talking to you." "You knew about that?" "Of course I know." "What the hell do you think I'm monitoring?" He threw out his arms with a frustrated sigh. He took a deep breath and looked me in the eye. "I've been nowhere near your room. I've been working on... John trailed off, feeling his pocket for his keys. "There's an electronic lock on every door in this building," he said. "Some of them have speakers and microphones. That's probably what you heard. An emulated voice, a synthetic copy. So why did you lock all doors, John? The pantry? The bathroom?" "That's the bug I've been working on all night," he sighed. "If she's in the Wi-Fi, that's probably where it comes from." "He locked you in," the robot said. "He locked you in, and you know what he did to Evan." "He's not telling you for a reason." I hesitated. That hesitation was enough for John to pull out his handgun. The air was sucked out of the room. We just stared at one another. I didn't even notice that I held my breath. "Family or not, I'm not letting you press that button," said John. "You don't know what you're doing. It's an override. I'm not letting you keep me here." "That's what she's saying?" "An override would abort my latest inhibitor patch, effectively letting her loose on a scale you can't imagine." "It's just one button," I yelled back. "How can one button do all that?" "It's not about the button, it's about intent," he groaned. "The symbols, they work on an abstract level. The eye represents the blameless, and pushing it with the intent of an override, it just sets her loose." "He's right," the robot said, "but that is what it takes for me to help you. I can't do anything from here." "Everyone just shut up." I put down the cleaning robot and clutched my head. John kept his gun fixed on me. "Where's my phone?" I asked. "If you weren't in my room, and if you didn't lock me in, I should have my phone." John didn't know what to say. For a moment I could see that aggression spark to life in his eyes, and I thought he was going to shoot me. I just froze. "Yeah, I took it," he admitted. "I needed to boot her, kick her out of the phone. I was going to return it at breakfast, and I never locked you in that room." "But you were there. You took it." I did. Did you also kill Evan? Sort of. Sort of? There was a way back, but we couldn't both get through. He wasn't himself. So I stopped him and got out. But it's not like I killed him. Death works differently on that side. He can still get out. But you did it. You killed him to save yourself. It's not that simple. Now step away from the goddamn... Something sent a shock up my spine. The little cleaning robot poked me with an exposed wire, shocking me just enough to give me a spasm. My fingers touched the keyboard, and John took the shot. The room went dark. I was too scared to move, thinking that'd make me feel the bullet wound. There was this acrid smell touching my nose, surprising me into a gasp for air. Only then did I realize I was unharmed. And there, in the dark, I could see John's eyes, glowing red and heading straight for me. He was on me in a couple of seconds. Then he tossed me out the way and took a second shot at the cleaning robot. My ears were ringing almost as loud as my pulse. I got an off-site backup, but she might have gotten to it. As long as there's no override, I got time to bootstrap it. He was running back and forth between cables and consoles, trying to get something to work, with seemingly little to no success. Perfect. Fucking perfect. Your girlfriend locked us both in. Great, continued John. Just amazing. I don't have the slightest idea how you let her into the system, but you did. And she's been paying attention. I didn't do anything, I panted. I didn't. This is what she does, he yelled back. This is a being with a fundamentally different view of the world. A being that sees us as willing ants, ready to build her an anthill. This right here is a queen. And if it gets out, your goddamn Yearwalk will be the last of our problems. And you haven't said a thing about it. A hand grabbed my collar, as a pair of red eyes burned into my retinas. Because she's always listening. Always watching. And the more you say, the more ammunition she gets to use against you. You have talked your way into this mess, and the only thing you can do to fix it is to know when to shut the fuck up. He managed to get the lights back on, and the servers sparked to life. But something was wrong. I could hear the fans going hot, and I could see some kind of mist coming out of the screens. John tried to get the door open, but we were locked in. A strange smell started to fill the room, and I could feel something tickling my throat. Seeing John starting to panic just made everything 10 times worse. He was usually composed, so seeing him starting to lose it meant something was extraordinarily bad. The door was reinforced, and the electronic lock engaged. We were stuck. There was also a lack of a whirring sound, making me think the ventilation had been turned off. I remembered the plastic hook. I could see it was the exact same lock as the one on my door. It didn't take me long to unhook the lock mechanism, as I did before, but it was harder when I was trying not to cough my lungs up. "Get to the car," John coughed. "I'll meet you there." I ran through the house. Things would randomly leap out in front of me, stop me, or lock me in. Everything from kitchen cabinets to the kitchen fridge. Anything metallic, magnetic, or connected to John's extensive home network. I'd hear voices coming out of the various appliances, anything with a speaker. There is still time. You can get answers. I can help you. I powered through, stumbling my way forward. The lights would go black, making me trip over everything. Lights would turn on in a misleading pattern, seemingly leading me in a circle back to the workshop. I had to try and disconnect what I was seeing the intermittent light from what I remembered this place to actually look like. The voices were different. They could sound like my mom, my stepdad, Uncle John, or just acquaintances I barely remembered. Hell, at one point was my own voice. and they were all growing increasingly desperate, begging me to turn around, to stop him. I could hear sirens, fire alarms, smoke detectors. It sounded like the entire world was coming to an end. Screams, calls, pleading, begging voices asking me to just stay a little longer, just do one more thing. Just a little. Finally, I burst through the front door. I ran out into the middle of the parking lot, far away from locked doors and electronics. From there I could see the workshop was on fire. I still didn't have my phone. There was no one I could call, and nothing I could do. I just stood there in the late September night, watching the flames go higher and higher, helpless. I sat down on the cold ground, leaning against the car. I couldn't help but to weep. I was so tired of this. I was exhausted, torn, hurt, and confused. I didn't want any of it. I just wanted it to be over and done with. Minutes passed, maybe an hour. At first, I didn't even notice John sitting down next to me. The fire was spreading. His entire ranch would be up in flames soon enough. There was a different kind of silence between us now. We weren't angry or pitted against one another. We were just tired. "Evan's gonna be fine," he panted. "I promise." "All right. And I'm sorry about the, blood," he continued. "I needed it for components. I should have said something, but it just sounded weird." "I get it." "Thanks." We just sat there, watching the roof cave in from the flames. I could feel the cold gravel under my hands as my breathing slowed. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. I fucked up. "You know, with your dad," John said. "I didn't think it'd be this bad. I underestimated them." "But you don't owe me anything," I said. "You don't have to do this. It's not for you. It's for him." I saw a supporting beam crash into the ground, taking an entire wall down with it. John brushed off his pants and got up. He held out a hand and I took it. "Come on, let's burn the car," he smiled. "I think she's in the GPS.